Okay, let's talk about bailouts, because I think this is fascinating. The word bailout doesn't exist in the Oxford English Dictionary. I mean, everyone's talking about it, but it doesn't exist, okay? We did a little search, askoxford.com, didn't exist. Thank you. I like this cartoon. A bailout is when your captain who's flying your airplane decides he's going to bail out, and there he is, and you're going down with the plane or with the ship. Okay. And this is a real bailout. Now, this is really cool. This is someone literally bailing out of his plane. And that is a real picture, and I think that's really cool. And this is the bailout now that everyone's talking about. This is Bernanke and his friends trying to bail out the U.S. economy. And what's interesting about this picture is we can keep bailing that water, but this ship may be going down like the Titanic. And so until we change some systemic issues, you know, I'm not sure how much of that water we can all bail out. And the most interesting issue about bailouts, and we're going to have to get into this, is what we have to characterize as moral hazards. Do we bail out the people who are responsible for this mess in the first place, or do we try and reward and create incentives for people who paid their mortgage every month, who maintain good credit, and somehow encourage them to help fix the problem? Up until now, I would argue that we have basically only bailed those folks out who have been part of the problem. And you look at the bailout of AIG, you look at the bailout of some of the major banks that helped package these loans and misstated the risks to little cities in Scandinavia and in Australia and elsewhere, and we're bailing those folks out. And it's kind of like having a family dinner, and mom makes dinner, and you call for dinner, and you have two sons. One comes to the table, and you say to the other son, if you don't come to the table now, I am not making dinner. The kitchen's going to be closed, and you're not going to eat tonight, right? And then a few hours later, the other kid comes down, and mom makes the kid, peanut butter sandwich would be okay, but instead mom makes the kid a full 4-course dinner. Okay? What are you telling the other kid who came to dinner, who showed up and who played by the rules? And I would venture to say that we are right now, as a society, rewarding more the folks that have been a part of this problem as opposed to the folks that are really trying to do the right thing. We're rewarding the rule breakers, I guess. And that's the unintended consequence. And here's a guy. He's licensed, insured, finished carpenter. I have 5 children. My wife and I don't want to bail out. I need work. Okay. And you know what? And maybe the Obama administration, by creating real jobs now, is going to start focusing on that. And that's very positive. But I thought that was interesting because he reflected the ethos that he just wants to make an honest day's wage. The foreclosure problem is both a national and international problem. The economic crisis and the foreclosure problem, I have to link them together, is both a national and international problem, but it's also a local problem, okay? And what's interesting is, while the real problem has occurred where the most mortgages have been made, which is in Florida, California, Nevada, and some places in Arizona, the red areas, these mortgages were packaged both nationally and internationally. And so while the highest level of defaults are in those areas, okay, that's also the area where most of the mortgages were made in the first place, because these were just areas that were hot and heavy for speculators and for folks who were migrating to these areas. But at the same time, what we see here is that in the rest of the country, like Nebraska, right? I mean, there really isn't a foreclosure crisis or an economic crisis of the kind we're talking about in Nebraska. But of course, Nebraska probably doesn't have much going on in terms of job creation or development in the first place. So I thought this map was very telling. Next. 6 states account for the bulk of third-quarter foreclosures, as we talked about: California, Florida, Arizona, Ohio, and Michigan. California, Florida, the rest of the U.S. And so it's interesting that even though the foreclosure crisis is here and in a few other states, again, it is a national and international crisis because these mortgages were bundled up and sold to investors and banks and financial institutions all over the place. And as we saw, by the way, one in 10 homes in the United States is either in foreclosure right now or about to be, or is just severely late in payments. Florida foreclosure filings we have here. In the month of November, we had 5,800, close to 6,000 filings. Palm Beach, 2,100. Miami, close to 6,000. Average in Florida, 1 in every 173 homes is in foreclosure. In November 2008, there were approximately 49,190 foreclosure filings in Florida. Okay. Home prices continue to fall. Median home price is $345. Now they're $259. Of course, some new home product that's come on the market is just less expensive to begin with, but there's no question that there's been massive price erosion, down probably 25% overall throughout the county. Future predictions. Okay. And these aren't mine. These are just what fairly intelligent people are saying that in fact have predicted this problem from day one. 8.5 to 10 million mortgages will be in default between 2008 and 2010. 5.2 million people will lose their homes. That's according to Moody's. And then Mark Zandi, chief economist for Moody's, he thinks that most of the proposals that certainly that the Bush administration has presented to date are insufficient, that the problem is way too large, and that we need a large comprehensive plan. And even though the President-elect Obama has not discussed much of what he had talked about on the campaign trail, I want to talk a little bit what he talked about on the campaign trail. On the campaign trail, he talked about, first and foremost, giving bankruptcy judges the right, like they do in commercial mortgages, to basically renegotiate and change the terms of a mortgage. Now, when I talk about changing the terms of a mortgage, I'm talking about not just changing the interest rate, not just changing the term, but also changing the principal amount. And in fact, in commercial transactions, they're allowed to do that, but under current law, they have no authority to do that. And many bankruptcy judges, as well as other federal judges, believe that this is a critical element in terms of trying to deal with a problem that isn't going to resolve itself until we're able to stem the foreclosure crisis. Now, why is stemming the foreclosure crisis so important? It's important because we're going to continue to have price erosion, and we're going to continue to have massive suburban blight that most of you probably aren't familiar with, but I have already seen, of homes that end up being vacant, that end up being vandalized, that end up being occupied by migrants, end up being taken over by gangs, okay? And this is happening now slowly but surely throughout the United States. And it can actually erode the entire social fabric of this country, to the point that I know people who are elected officials, and I won't mention names, who are very, very concerned about this. And my understanding is that militias are being, the militias of the various states are quietly being trained for riot control. I know elected officials who have contingency plans both for themselves and their family in case there is a complete erosion of the social fabric. And so we must first and foremost figure out a way to stem the foreclosures. And the reason for that is the banks don't want to accept their responsibility of owning these homes, because they got to pay the pool man, they got to pay the electric bill, they got to pay the real estate taxes, they got to pay the homeowner association assessments. We got homeowner associations that are suing banks for not foreclosing fast enough. We got homeowner associations that are going bankrupt because the banks aren't paying. Okay? I mean, this is a domino effect that is of unbelievable social proportion. So we need to get the foreclosure problem under control. And the first step would be to give bankruptcy judges some prerogative. Now, that's important because if, in fact, that happens, there will be repricing of mortgage securities that are already out there, and there'll be a repricing of mortgages as they are issued by banks, because they have to now internalize the risk that some of their principal could, in fact, be eroded in a bankruptcy.